Akimbo of Africa, Akimbo and the Snakes, fourth chapter. Most dangerous. That afternoon, Uncle Peter showed Akimbo the work which he had in mind for him while he was staying at the snake park. It was a job which used to be done by an old man who loved snakes, but who had decided to retire and go live with his sons in the country. The job was that of feeding some of the snakes in the cages and writing down what they ate. "We like to know if a snake is eating or not," said Uncle Peter. "So we keep a note of what they get and what they eat." It was not a difficult job to do, and Akimbo was delighted to be given the responsibility. Some of the snakes ate lizards, and he had to catch the lizards from the tank where they were kept and then drop them into the right cage. At first it seemed cruel to Akimbo, and he felt sorry for the lizards, but he remembered that this was exactly what snakes would eat in the nature, and the snakes couldn't go hungry. The snakes seemed to pay attention to the lizards when first they were dropped into the cage. Don't pay no attention when first they were dropped into the cage, but often when Akimbo returned later, the lizards had disappeared and the snakes looked fatter and were sleeping. Feeding the very large snakes, particularly the pythons, was a more difficult business. These snakes ate rabbits or rats, and they were slower in swallowing their larger prey than the smaller snakes. Over the next few days, Akimbo got used to his job in the snake park and was pleased when Uncle Peter congratulated him. "You're doing very well," he said, "but remember one thing. No matter how confident you get, bear in mind that some snakes are just waiting for you to get careless. And with some of these snakes, you'll never get a chance to get careless again." Get it? Akimbo took the advice to heart. He knew that many of the snakes in the park could inflict a fatal bite, and he was determined that he would never get too close to them. He was not allowed in the enclosure, of course, and he was also forbidden to feed one or two of the very aggressive or very dangerous snakes. This was done by Uncle Peter. But he was still very careful to check that a snake was at the other end of the cage when he opened the feeding hatch to toss in its food. Good for him. One of the men who worked at the park, Luke, had been bitten very seriously by a puff adder a couple of years ago and told Akimbo all about it. "That's the sort of snake that bit me," he said, pointing to a thick, fairly short snake that lay lazily at the end of the enclosure. Okay, and yet he came back to work? Akimbo looked at the puff adder. He knew a little bit about snakes. Unlike many other snakes, which would get out of the people's way before anybody at all got close to them, these snakes were sluggish. They would lie in the grass, and the first thing you knew about them was when you heard them hissing as you were on the point of treading on them. "I didn't see it," Luke said. "I could have sworn it wasn't there. I was picking up another snake for milking, and I took a step backward, right on to the end of a puff adder. It gave out a tremendous hiss and then twisted itself around and latched onto my leg." Ooh, they have terrible things, those snakes. They hook onto you and they pump in the venom. Oddly enough, it wasn't painful right at the beginning. I pulled him off and ran to the gate. Then I felt it beginning to sting. Luke grimaced as he remembered the incident. No doubt. "Your uncle was in his office, but he ran to the laboratory more quickly than I had ever seen him move before. We kept the anti-venom there, you see. It was to be kept cool. He came back and filled the syringe before my eyes. Then he injected me all about the bite and gave me another injection further up my leg. By now my leg was throbbing with pain, and it felt as if somebody was running a hot knife up it. I tried to walk, but it was too painful, and so they had to carry me out to the truck. I hardly remember the trip to the hospital. I think I fainted because the next thing I knew, I was in the hospital and a doctor was feeling my leg. I gave a shout each time his hands touched my flesh. It was that painful. I spent a month in the hospital altogether, a month. And he came back to work. Okay. All right. I spent a month in the hospital altogether. I was lucky. If I hadn't had those injections straight away, it could have been much worse. Akimbo listened to the story quietly. Next time I'm walking through the park, he thought, I'll take special care where I put my feet. Yeah, no doubt, Akimbo. But it was not the puff adders that were the most dangerous snakes in the park. Seriously? This honor, if you could call it that, belonged to two other species. They were very different to look at, but extremely dangerous to man. Oof. The first of these was the gaboon viper. I never heard of that. I have never in my life heard of the gaboon viper. Let's look that up. Gaboon viper. This was a thick, diamond-patterned snake, which Akimbo was not allowed to feed. It was not all that long, but it made up for its lack of length by being almost as thick as a python. What? It's short and fat? At one end, it had a curious spade-shaped head in which two dark black eyes glittered at the other. Its body tapered abruptly to a thin tail. The gaboon viper was a beautiful snake to look at. The diamond pattern on its spine were yellow and green and looked like fallen leaves. This was no accident. This snake liked to live in forests, and the leaf-like pattern of its skin provided the perfect camouflage. The problem with a bite from the gaboon viper, said Akimbo's uncle, is that we just don't have an anti-venom to deal with. The normal injections would be almost useless if you were bitten by one. The other extremely dangerous snake was more common and more widely dreaded throughout that part of Africa. This was the mamba, a name which in Akimbo's mind spelled danger. There are two sorts of mamba. I have heard of mamba, explained Uncle Peter. The black mamba is the more common sort, and we've got this here. The other is the green mamba, which many people say is even more dangerous than its black cousin. Why is that? Asked Akimbo. Is its poison stronger? No, it's weaker, said Uncle Peter. But the green mamba lives in trees, you see. It has been known to drop down on people walking below them. The black mamba is usually on the ground, where you can see it. Ooh, that is sneaky. Uncle Peter took Akimbo to the mamba cage inside. Inside, two long black snakes moved slowly over the twigs of a branch. The snakes watched Akimbo through the glass of the cage, their eyes unflickering, their small forked tongues darting in and out in rapid, almost invisible movements. The sight of the two snakes chilled Akimbo. There was something sinister about them, and he imagined what it would be like to be chased by an angry black mamba. He had heard that a snake like that could outpace a person over a short distance, and if this happened, you had very little chance. Which means it can catch you, it can run fast, it can slither faster than you. What would happen if one of them bit you? He asked Uncle Peter. His uncle was silent for a few moments. Many people say you'd last about 4 minutes, he said. That may be true or it may not. I think you'd be very lucky to survive, though. The snakes moved suddenly, and one of them slid right up the glass from the cage and stared at Akimbo. Ooh. Akimbo drew back, and his uncle laughed. Don't worry, he said. They're perfectly safe, as long as they're in there and you're out here. Let's hope that stays like that. Akimbo noticed that the next cage was empty. What was in there? He asked. Uncle Peter tapped on the glass of the empty cage. That cage is reserved, he said. I've been waiting for a green mamba for years, but I've never managed to catch one. The day I do, it goes in there.